Excuse me. So, risk management, very basics. This is what you have to think about if you're the company officer or the person who's acting as the officer when you pull up at any kind of fire or significant rescue incident. You've got to keep this stuff in mind. So just to remember, and I don't have a guitar riff for everybody, unfortunately, but we're now doing modern fire attack because we are, in fact, modern. So this includes our slicers. There's still some controversy about this because firefighters are old school. Even the ones who are 19 years old are old school for somehow, and they think this is crazy stuff. But it's actually backed up by science, backed up by FDNY and Chicago fire departments, places that actually fight fire on a regular basis, unlike the rest of the country. So slicers is an acronym because that's what we live for in the fire service, our acronyms. We have to have an acronym for everything. So it's size up, locate the fire, identify the flow path, cool from a safe location, extinguish the fire, which, you know, makes sense, and then rescue and salvage. And a lot of people freaked out when this came out because rescue was at the bottom. This isn't necessarily in order. Rescue should be done when it needs to be done. So, you know, don't freak out. Oh my God, why are we doing all this stuff first? Rescue is always the primary consideration. So your size up basics. I mean, most of you, I'm sure, have done a size up at some point or another. At least I hope so. So your size up should be given upon arrival on the scene or as soon as possible after. There are definitely times where you may pull up at an incident and you're not sure what the heck's going on. So it might take a moment before you get your bearings and you get to actually see what's happening. So it's perfectly acceptable, instead of pulling up, excuse me, and doing the whole, I'm on the scene, I've got a 3-story brick structure with a airplane on the roof or whatever, to say, we're on the scene, stand by for a size up. If you do that, however, remember, you still need to do a size up. You got to tell them what's going on. We need to know. A couple of years ago, back in our department, there was apparently a debate amongst some members and officers about who we were doing the size up for. And there was this group that felt that the size up was done for dispatch. That's why we were doing the size up, so dispatch would know what was going on. And that is completely not the case. Frankly, the dispatchers don't really care. You know, they're going to parrot, they're going to put things in the system that we tell them to. The size up is for us and for other agencies coming in so that we know what's going on. 9.5 times out of 10 in most small and suburban departments, your dispatch information is probably going to match what you pull up to, but not always. I've been in a situation pulling up expecting a fire alarm in Birch Hall and finding smoke billowing out the back of the building. So things will change, and this is why the size up is critically important. Your size up needs to be brief, clear, and direct and to the point. You do not want to go on for a 5-minute size up because that's not going to help anybody. And your radio will probably time out at that point. Size ups are typically done on fire and hazmat incidents and motor vehicle crashes. There are departments out there that do a size up on everything. They pull up at a medic call and they do a size up. That's, you know, that's their thing, but I find that to be completely stupid and ridiculous. So don't do that here. So real incidents, get a size up. So your classic size up aid from our friends at the National Fire Academy. This whole thing, coal was wealth. And you're supposed to remember what the hell that acronym means when you pull up at a fire. So this is your first time in the officer seat. You pull up at a working fire. And of course, the first thing in your head is this stupid acronym. All these things: construction, occupancy, area, life safety, weather, appliances, size, water, exposure, apparatus, location, time, height, and hazmats. Really? That's a little insane. They still teach us to this day at the National Fire Academy. The curriculum that they're using, of course, is from 1986, so that may be part of it. So a little much? Yeah, most likely it is. So instead, we can go with Altman's on-scene report, also known as the I don't know what the hell that is, AOSR. I just figured I should give it a letters because we do that in the fire service. For me, what I've learned in my lengthy career is that it's kind of like writing a patient care report. You go through what you see and what you're going to do. Those of you who do that chart method, forget it. I don't know. I don't even know how you guys do that as an EMS call. But so start with your unit designation. Who the hell are you? Chief ADM on the scene, building an area description. And you don't have to have all of these, but you want to have the ones that are pertinent. So the occupancy, the size of the building, the height. If anyone's ever listened to FDNY's fire radio, when they have a battalion get on scene, particularly in a commercial occupancy, which is half the city, they will do the dimensions of the building. So these guys get on scene, they'll be like, 2-9 battalion on the scene. I got a, 300 by 50 taxpayer. How the hell do you determine that? With the height, and then they go into the exposures, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes you listen to these battalions, and it's almost a 2-minute size up on the scene. So that's a little excessive. Just talk about what you need to talk about. And then the obvious problems. Is there nothing showing? Is smoke showing? Are we partially involved? Do we have a working fire? Are we fully involved? So what do we see? You can always change this. If you pull up and you say there's nothing showing, and then you do a 360 and the back of the house is on fire, feel free to change that, and you really should. You also want to put in the actions taken. What are you doing? What command mode are you going to follow? What tactical operations are you taking? Are we pulling a line? Are we laying in? Are we laddering the exterior? Those kind of things. Your strategy, is it offensive or defensive? Hopefully you all remember what the difference is. And then command confirmation with your name, and not your personal name, but you need to name your command. So Engine 82 will be Birch Hall Command. Could be Corey Street Command, you could be Livermore Street Command, Cresco Command, Medical Marijuana Command, whatever. But it needs to be, actually don't use that one. But it's either the name of the building or the name of the street that it's on. We used to be really big in incident management that whatever your unit number was, that's who was taking command. You can still do that if you like. Captain 81 is in command, because that way we all know, okay, it's Nate, he's in command. Some of you with more esoteric unit numbers that most of us can't remember, it may just be easier to say Engine 82's on the scene, Engine 82's in command, that kind of thing. Remember also, you do not need to take command if it's less than 3 apparatus dispatched. So if it's just a single engine going to a fire alarm, you don't need to take command. You still do a size up, but you don't need to take command, because that's just a standard NIMS thing under incident management. Some factors to consider when you're sizing up a structure. Life hazard. Is there a life hazard? Remember, this is our most important thing. So is it someone? Do we have to go in there? Do we have to save somebody? Do we have to be heroic? Do we have to bring a cat out? Do we whatever? That's important. How can we tell? How can we tell where the life hazard is, or is there a life hazard? We're going to get into that in a little bit. The occupancy, what's inside? There's a difference between a fire at the AT&T building on Glen Street and a fire in the typical home. Why? Because what's inside? What's inside the AT&T building is a lot of batteries and a lot of cabling and a lot of other horrible stuff that is going to make the world a terrible place when it's on fire. The construction. I just put these types in there because it always screws up half of you, especially when we do some kind of promotional exam. Nobody expects you to pull up and say, we're on the scene of a class 1 fire resistive structure. That would be pretty impressive, but that's also a little silly. So just as a refresher though, class 1 fire resistive, that is our parking garages. SPALT is pretty close to that at this point on campus. Class 2 is a non-combustible. Class 3 is heavy. What? That's not right. We've got heavy timber, which is 4. Class 3 is ordinary construction. And then class 5 is wood frame, which is pretty much any house that's out there. Height and area, sometimes it's not obvious. Think about cities or small towns that are on hills. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, they have a lot of hills in that city. And there was a fire back in the 90s where 3 firefighters became lost and then died in the fire. What had happened was it was a 2-story house from the front on the side of a hill, but the back had 3 stories. No one did a 360, so they didn't know that. So the crew went in, they went down some stairs. They assumed they were on the 1st floor, so when they were calling for a mayday, they said they were on the 1st floor. Crews went to the 1st floor and never found them because they were below grade. So, height and area may not always be obvious. Location and extent of the fire, where is it? How deep-seated is it? Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not. Do we have exposures? And what are they? And do we need to protect them immediately? Again, FDNY, the battalion will pull up and he'll say, exposure A is the street, exposure B is similar attached, exposure C is the alley, exposure D is similar attached. I flirted with that idea for a little bit, and it's just a lot of stuff to say. But you need to consider what those exposures are. Your apparatus and personnel. What do we have responding? Back in the old days, 15 years ago, 10 years ago even, we could get 2 engines out, we could get 3 engines out when we had 3 engines. That's not the case anymore for most fire departments. So when we had a reported structure fire this morning, we had our engine with 4, Xenia Townships with 3, Mad River with 3, God knows what was on Right Pat, probably a bunch of aliens. But all of us make a first alarm together. So, you got to keep that in mind. How far out are you? Where's help coming from? And then water supply. Is it hydrogen or is it rural? If it's rural, it's a pain in the ass. Frankly, it's a real pain in the ass. Hydrants make life so much easier. So if you're in the countryside, get a lot of tankers, get them coming. Life will be better for you. Keep in mind your weather conditions too. What's the weather condition going to bear on? It's going to bear on your staff. It's going to bear on your apparatus. If it's 20 below 0, the trucks are not going to be happy, particularly if the pump operator is not running the pump. If it's 20 below 0, crews aren't going to be happy. If it's 112 degrees, same thing. All that crap we wear makes life not easy for us. Keep in mind street conditions. Imagine a structure fire downtown during street fair. And then potential hazardous materials. That just makes life even better. So if you look at this house, and you can, if you want to answer this, you can unmute or just give me a thumbs up or something. What's the likelihood in this house that someone is home? If you look closely, what do we see? So the lights are all on, but that could just be a security feature, right? But if you look closely, if you look in this area, there's a car and there's another one back there. Again, that doesn't 100% tell you that people are home, but it's a good indicator that there may be people inside. So we need to be detectives when we pull up. Perfect world, we pull up for a structure fire and everyone's waiting out front for us. And they've evacuated and they say, we're all out, yay. But it doesn't always work that way. So we have to start to figure things out. Most homes that are multi-story, that are 2-story, where do we find the occupants at night if they're asleep? First floor or second floor? Primarily the second floor, sorry. Now there is a caveat to that, and that is in Yellow Springs, things could be completely different. There is a house right next to, right down the street here on Marshall. It's almost to Livermore. It's built about 15 years ago. It's a 2-story maroon home. It's well constructed, I know that. But the downside or the weird thing about it is that the people who built it, was a contractor and her wife, they wanted to do things a little bit differently. So all the living areas, the function areas are upstairs. So the kitchen, living room, dining room, entertainment room, all that stuff are on the top floor. The bedrooms are on the lower level. So that kind of throws things off for your typical 2-story home a little bit. So, use your eyes, use your brain. See what you can figure out when you pull up on the scene. And don't forget your 360-degree size up, your walk around. This is the company officer's responsibility unless there's a command officer there who already did it. So theoretically, unless you're super short-staffed, at a residence, and we're going to talk residences today, your 360 should be done by your company officer while your crew is pulling a line or getting a ladder or making sandwiches, whatever they're doing, that 360 should be done. So this is an additional size up tool. So no one expects when you give your initial report that you've done your 360, but you can add into it. So you do your initial, we're on the scene, I've got a 2-story wood frame residence, got a heavy smoke condition on from the 2nd floor. Looks like everyone's evacuated. This is going to be an offensive attack. We're pulling a line, and then you go do your 360 while the people are doing while they're pulling the line. If you find new things, then update your size up. That's perfectly acceptable. You can't always do a 360 though. I don't expect, you pull up at Cresco, I don't expect Cassie to go out and run around Cresco to do a 360. That would be kind of fun to watch. So do a walk around, and remember PAL, people, access, and location of the fire.
I expect it.
Good. Murphy expects it, so we're under control there. So we're looking for, as we go around, are there people hanging out the windows? Are there access issues? Can we get into the building from the rear if we need to? And do we find the fire? As a refresher, remember our tactical priorities. This is going back to fire class, and it hasn't changed since when I took fire class to when whoever our newest firefighter is. So rescue, incident stabilization, used to be just called fire control, property conservation, and then safety, which is our overarching one throughout the entire incident. So rescue is always first, but it may not be done first depending on what's going on in the scene when we get there. Fire class teaches us, Firefighter 1 teaches us that we're going to pull up and someone's hanging out the window conveniently screaming, help me, help me, help me. And we can get a ladder up and get them out before we even worry about the fire. Realistically and in real life, that is not the case. Oftentimes, you need to fight the fire before you can do the rescue. So rescue, incident stabilization, property conservation, and then overarching is safety. As an incident commander who's been on the scene of a fatal fire and in command there, where there's a victim in and we couldn't save them, rescue is the hardest one not to be able to do. But unfortunately, sometimes that's the case. Fires do get out of control, and people unfortunately die in fires in much higher numbers than they should, given that we're a allegedly civilized country. So rescue, incident stabilization, property conservation, and safety. Remember the property conservation one, because that is very important. Firefighters across our country seem to forget that one sometimes, and let people's property go up in flames and that kind of stuff, and that's a bad thing. SDM is the strategic decision-making model. This is just from the nerd world of incident command stuff that I live in. It's just a decision-making matrix. First unit arrives, they size up the critical factors, think about risk management, risk a lot, blah, blah, blah. Come up with a strategy, and this isn't like a whole long strategy session. This is put the fire out, rescue the people. We come up with an incident action plan. How are we going to put the fire out and rescue the people? And then the tactical objectives. Okay, find the fire, get water on it, find the victim, get them out of there. All that should take you about 20 seconds to figure out. The biggest problem with any on-scene commander, whether they're Firefighter Fred up to the fire commissioner, is that they get stuck in this decision-making model and they can't make a rapid decision. This cannot take you 5 minutes to determine all these things because people are dying, potentially. So these need to be done right away. Psychologically, and from a decision-making study viewpoint, this is easier if you have the experience to back it up, and not because you're cool and and you've got the guitar riffs going, but it's because you've seen these. Our brains are wired as firefighters, paramedics, cops, soldiers, sailors, I don't know, maybe not sailors, but air persons, to see something and to recognize it, and your brain recognizes that you've seen this before, you've been there, you've done that, and you know what worked. The problem we're facing as the fire service is that the number of fires has dropped so dramatically in this country that you have a lot of firefighters who they'll go years without actually fighting a fire. And I'm not talking about like, oh, look, it's a kitchen fire, I'm gonna go in, oh, use my extinguisher, fire is out, I'm a fireman now. No, actually a working fire where all hands are working and you're doing stuff. The other problem is that the fire officers aren't getting that experience that they used to get even 15, 20 years ago. So now, according to a recent study, the average urban fire officer may go in their career to 20 to 30 working fires. 20 to 30. And we're not talking about surround and drowns. We're talking about actual fires where you actually have to do something. If you contrast that with Tom Brennan, who was a captain in FDNY in the 60s and late 60s and early 70s, he is noted as the most active, I guess, firefighter in American history. He went to 30,000 working building fires in his career with FDNY. 30,000. So we don't get that kind of experience anymore, unfortunately. So you got to study and do drills and that kind of stuff. So strategic tactical aids. This is right out of the manual for slicers and modern fire equipment, fire attack. But it's also from older stuff. This came up with in the 50s. Recio VS. So you got rescue, exposures, confine the fire, extinguish the fire, overhaul, ventilate, and salvage. Now we all know, prior to about 5 years ago, ventilation was usually up closer to the top. We were getting on the roof all the time, and if you're in San Bernardino, you're still doing that, and Alex is watching your videos and getting all excited. What science has now shown us is that that ventilation factor is not the important thing that it used to be. So it's in there. You can move this depending on your strategy and your tactics. Salvage can also move. If we're fighting a fire in a museum, you damn well better start salvaging quickly, because if we lose $30 million, someone's going to get in trouble. So Recio. And then strategy and tactics is figuring out also, what line are we going to take? Are we going to take the cross lay? Are we going to take the 2.5? Or we're going to use the big guns, the monitor nozzles, the deck gun, etc. There's a whole lot that goes into making this determination. You want to make it right the first time. You don't want to bring a knife to a gunfight. Cross lays are great because they're easy to move, but we only have 200 feet of them, and they don't flow that much water. If you're inside with a cross lay and after 2 minutes you're not making a dent in the fire, it's time for a bigger line. Not a second cross lay. Too many firefighters nowadays attend, what's the technical term for it? Pussy-ass fire academies, where they're afraid to use a 2.5. Oh, it's too much work. Well, it's too much work because you're using some dumbass task force tips fog nozzle on it, and you got to pump that thing at 200 PSI. Put a smoothbore tip on it. It's going to work really well. Why? How do we know that? Because Andy Fredericks, God rest his soul, from FDNY, did tons and tons and tons and tons of research on the effectiveness of smoothbore tips and high flows of water. This isn't Sweden. We're not penciling shit. This is America. We use a lot of water. So if you need your 2.5, use it. If you need your deck gun, use it. Don't be afraid to use that. But keep in mind, you better have the water to back it up. Tactical benchmarks. So these are all our tactical benchmarks. We talk about them. A lot of people have no idea what the hell they mean. So our size up, that's what we're talking about now. It's that initial report, sizing up the fire or the incident. Establishing command. If it's a real working incident, a structure fire, commercial structure fire, a hazardous materials incident, you have to establish command. It actually is the law. All clear. What's an all clear? Yes, you are correct, Jeremy. An all clear is there are no victims in the structure. We know that there's no one inside. And again, that means we know that there's no one inside. So don't be calling it all clear if you haven't checked the building or talked to building occupants to find out that there is in fact an all clear. It doesn't mean there's no hazards or anything like that. All clear means one thing: no victims, there's no life hazard. Once we hit that all clear, that clears us to worry about all the other tactical priorities. And we're gonna get down to water on fire. This is one that came out probably the last 10, 15 years. This allows the incident commander to know when you guys are flowing water. That is very helpful. So the crew inside, attack to command, we got water on fire. Water on the fire, and the dispatchers will even note that as well. Loss stopped. Loss stopped deals with property conservation. Loss stopped is when we have stopped the property loss at that building. So the fire is out. We're not flowing water anymore. We got to clean up, but we're going to be there for a while. But we have stopped the primary loss to the structure because that is our job. Under control and situation contained sometimes are used interchangeably, but they're not the same thing. Under control just means that we're under control. The fire is not going to start up again, but we may be there for another 2 hours, or the fire investigator may be there, that kind of stuff. Under control at a rope rescue incident could be we've rescued the victim, they're in the medic on the way to Sowen or Zion, either one. We're going to be on scene a while because now we got to pick up all those ropes and things. But the actual incident's over. Now we're just cleaning up. And then situation contained, command terminated. That's it. We're going home. Everything's done. Everyone's either available or they'll tell you when they're available. So those are tactical benchmarks. Again, we don't need them for everything. You don't need to be calling it all clear on a medic call or water on fire on a fire alarm. But these are the ones that we want for a structure fire. Command modes, we referenced these before. So these are right out of the SOPs, they're right out of NIMS and right out of Fireground Command. Nothing showing, fast attack, and command mode. Nothing showing mode is exactly what it says. There's nothing showing. What these modes really mean is what your company officer or officer in charge is going to be doing. So a nothing showing mode, company officer is going into the structure to investigate with his or her crew. So we're all staying together as a crew. We're going in. You may split them inside, but the company officer is integral to that investigative process, to seeing what's going on. Sometimes on these nothing showings too, this is where a little bit of experience comes in, where maybe you have had the experience of knowing what a furnace smells like when it first starts up and dust is burning on the igniters and that kind of thing, or what a ballast smells like when it's going bad. So the company officer is important and needs to go in there with the crew. Fast attack is when we pull up and there is a fire, and the company officer, their participation in the actual attack is also essential. You may have an operator, an MPO, an officer, and one crew member. You're not sending that crew member in by themselves with a hose line. So that company officer is going to take command and go inside and fight the fire. This is one of the hardest things you will ever do, because now you are thinking both tactically and strategically. You're not seeing everything that's going on. You're inside the fire fighting it, and everyone and their uncle is doing my favorite thing, and that is calling you to say, we're on the scene. Do you have an assignment for us? If I had an assignment for you, I'll tell you. Just tell me you're on the scene. I don't need a whole bunch of, radio traffic just because. And then command mode is when you pull up on the scene and it is a significant incident and the company officer or the acting officer has made the decision, I need to stay outside and let my crew function, but I need to stay outside and establish command because there's going to be a lot going on. Now, that's going to depend on the size of your crew. Most of the time, the first two modes are what we are going to do, nothing showing and fast attack. If you're in the front seat of the engine, those two are your primary job. You are not a command officer, you are a company officer when you're in that front seat. Every now and then, though, you're going to encounter that situation where, shit, I need to stay outside and take command and be command stationary at the engine. Some important terms to know for the fire and size up stuff. Smoke showing, heavy smoke condition, a working fire, partially involved, and then fully involved. In Greene County, keep in mind that in our CAD system, when you say working fire, that triggers a bunch of stuff. They're going to contact utilities and have them respond. And if you're not at the full alarm level, they're going to bring that up to the full alarm level, that kind of stuff. I think, nope, not yet. Wait a minute. Okay. So smoke showing is also a pretty easy one. It just means that there is, in fact, smoke showing. Heavy smoke condition is a lot of smoke. Working fire is the fire has really got a head start. It's doing shit. Partially involved, only part of the building. And then fully involved means the whole thing is on fire. So Bernardini's continuum of structural involvement goes from smoke showing at the top down to parking lot at the bottom. Anything really from 6 on means that if they're inside, if there's a person inside, they're dead. No one is going to survive from 6 on. The amount of heat inside is going to kill you. If you think about how hot it gets in a burn room when we have all our gear on, victims are laying in there with nothing on. So the chances of survival are so slim, it's completely improbable. So smoke showing. Now, some departments will do full-on officer training academies where they're going to teach you when you pull up, I'm on the scene, got a working fire, 50% involvement, 60%, 40%. That's a little excessive. Got a working fire, means you actually have fire showing. If it's just smoke, it may be a working fire on the inside, but you don't see it. So you had smoke showing. If you get inside and find it, we have a working fire. Make sense? If not, unmute and ask a question. So this is a heavy smoke condition. And we'll do a reading smoke drill later on. But this, if you pull up and you see this, this should concern you, and a lot of smoke coming out of the Chinese restaurant like that. So that's a lot, at least it's not black, so that's a good thing. But there's a lot of smoke, very heavy smoke condition. Working fire partially involved. So we've got, looks like the garage is on fire, it's spreading to the house. Can we save the house? Potentially, yeah. You just have to be quick. Franco there in the front yard by himself, he's not gonna be able to do much, just stand there with his radio. But we need to get in there and hit it. In the old days, when I started, we would go in the front door with a line and fight the fire from the inside. Now science tells us it's perfectly acceptable to hit it from the outside, darken it down, and then get your ass inside and find the rest of that fire. Hopefully this is a hydrant area. There's a big ass, or there's Pat's tankers right behind us. You can maybe darken it down with the deck gun. Won't take much to darken that down. And then fully involved. Again, no one is alive in there. Don't go all nuts thinking we got to get inside. One of the problems we have in the fire service is that every month Firehouse magazine comes, and there's always a really cool picture on the cover of guys going into this building that flames are shooting out, and why. It makes people think that's what you should do. Don't go in that building. You will die too. All right. So we've got this house on fire here. Excuse me. There's a good amount of fire. It seems to be spreading, but it's kind of hard to tell at this point because the fire is kind of obstructing our view. It may just be limited a little bit here and definitely there. It's a small house. This would be perfect for a 360. So an example of a size up would be engine 82's on the scene. Single story wood frame residence, fire showing from the alpha side. No occupants visible. Sorry, engine 82 will be in fast attack mode. Hitting the fire from the exterior, this will be an offensive attack. Engine 82 will be South College Command. Command will be mobile. So in this situation, the company officer made the decision that they have to go into fast attack and assist their crew. This is like the perfect slicers type fire. You can darken that exterior fire out pretty quickly. What's probably burning is the vinyl siding. It's causing most of that. If you look at the color of the smoke, it's pretty dark, which indicates hydrocarbons. If you can get that darkened down really quickly, it's going to give you a better idea of where the fire actually is. Darken it down. If possible, get your ass inside and find the rest of that fire. Example 1. Example 2. Got a little bit of smoke showing. So we got engine 82s on the scene, 2-story, and this could also be 1-story depending on your definition, but it's got a second livable story in theory. Engine 82s on the scene, single-story wood frame residence, fire showing from the alpha side. What? Oh, I went the wrong way. Engine 82 on scene, 2-story wood frame residence with light smoke showing from the roof. Occupants appear to be evacuated. Engine 82 will be pulling a line and investigating. This will be an offensive operation. Engine 82 will be Jackson Street Command. Command will be mobile. So on this one, because there's a good amount of smoke showing, and possibly, you can see a little bit of fire there, I think. It's kind of hard to see. Our SOP and just common sense and what you'll be trained at the Ohio Fire Academy will tell you, you need to deploy a line just in case. Where there's smoke, there is typically fire. This is enough to show that if there's a fire burning, is this early or late in its stage? Why am I asking? You guys can't really answer. It's early. It's just getting started. So we need to have a line available right away to get this fire out. We've got smoke back here, smoke up here, and smoke is showing down here at the base of the roof line. So there's a lot of crap going on in this. A key thing here in this size up is that occupants appear to be evacuated. So this is going to give us that push towards the all clear. Once we verify it, we've got out, company officer goes up, Jim Bob comes up and says, yep, we've got the whole family out. We're all over here in the pickup truck. I even got Boomer the dog with me. Then you can update dispatch and say, we have an all clear in the structure. Everyone else coming in then knows that there's no victims. We're not going to have to do a search. We're not going to do a rescue more than likely unless one of us goes down. Then it lets us move into the fire attack world. Example 3. Engine 82 on the scene, large barn, fully involved, no nearby exposures. We need to know that. That's important. This will be a defensive operation. If you thought offensive, you're in serious trouble. Captain 81 will be Hilt Road Command at Engine 82. Central, send me 4 additional tankers. Send me everybody. Actually, I believe Captain 81's had a similar situation on Hilt Road with a lot of fire, but not the barn.
There's quite a few cars on that one. Quite a few.
All right, this guy here. So we look at this one from the outside. There's a lot going on in just this initial photo. Obviously, it's nighttime. If there were people home, they might be asleep in there. There's a ramp on the front of the house, which tells us that there may be people who cannot assist their own escape, i.e. invalids, infirm, the handicapped, whatever you want to call it. So we may have a lot of work to do here. Plus, there's an alarm system. So if it's a medical alarm, we're going to have to reset the call box while we're inside. So looking at this fire, the question is, would it be offensive or defensive operations?
Offensive.
Thank you, whoever that was. Yes, offensive. The upper floor is on fire, but we don't know about the lower floor. People could damn well be alive on that first floor, so we need to treat this like a real fire and start putting it out. Tactics-wise, you can hit it hard from the yard with your line and then make entry into the building. Remember, when we're hitting something from the outside, from the exterior, this is a quick knockdown. You're not going to stand out there shooting water into this thing for 5 minutes. Fire goes out relatively quickly in these situations. So get a line in there with our smoothbore tips. You're going to flow a lot of water in, darken it down, not extinguish, and then get inside, find that fire while it's resetting itself. All right, on this fella, size up's relatively easy. This car's fully involved. Remember, once a car is on fire, 9.5 times out of 10, it's written off. You know, there's not a whole lot of people who've had their engine burn up and the insurance company makes them put a new engine in and get the car painted. It's typically cheaper to buy a new car. So this is a fully involved vehicle on the side of the road. What hazards do we encounter with this kind of incident? Correct. Yes. It's much better in person. You know, we need to be concerned about the highway. We need to be concerned about our safety. Most things that probably were going to explode in this car have probably already exploded. The tires probably went. The fuel tank's probably gone. The bumper, if it was going to shoot off, it probably shot off. Doesn't mean just run on there and be crazy. So hit this from a distance. Keep in mind, if we're on the road and there's no hydrant or tanker nearby, you can extinguish this with 750 gallons. Yeah, that's not a problem. But with a smoothbore tip, that water is going to go quickly, so you need to really be careful with how much water you're expending. Back in the day when we had Lieutenant Voldemort here, he had this really weird, like, attack a car fire from a mile away with this weird swirling fire pattern, and then by the time you got there, you've already gone through a quarter of your tank. No, just start, you know, like here, hitting it, hit the ground, get those parts that are really scary, try and get that thing done. Make sure the road's shut down. If the cops are there, it's a great job for them. Well, that is in fact their job. Use the engine to take a blocking position. We don't want people zooming by as we're fighting a fire. Luckily for us here, we don't have to deal with interstates, but a lot of people do. So we need to, you know, watch that and be safe. All right, we already talked about that, sorry. Size up. All right, so what's going on in this one? Anyone want to do a size up on this? Maybe unmute yourself, obviously, and size it up? Or not, just saying. Yeah, very good. It's a single-story wood frame residence. Do we have a working fire? We do.
Yes, we do.
Thank you. So if you don't pull past this structure, though, like you're supposed to, you may not see the fire. So we know we have a lot of smoke. We're coming in from this direction. So pull past just a little bit, and you're going to see, oh, we have a fire. So on the scene, single-story wood frame structure. Got a working fire on the Delta side. Heavy smoke. Hopefully everyone's out. We'll figure that out. We're going to be attacking with a crosslay and going in for search. Captain 81 will be Ridgecrest Command. Command will be mobile. My house is along for the world. Okay, so did that one. All right, so looking at this one, before you even think size up, look at that column of fire. What is that telling us just from that? Yes, there's a lot of fuel feeding that fire. It could be a gas tank that's on fire or something like that, that is making that volume of fire shoot up like it's doing. Whatever's going on back here, it is now extended into the house. This stuff is starting to go. So this smoke coming through is indicating that this is an older home, obviously. It's got real wood, and that real wood is starting to burn. As opposed to this. What is this house made of? Is this made of heavy timber? No, this is not Malta von Matheson's house. This is toothpicks. This is the typical American construction style. So this is going to burn a lot faster than this. So we've got a little bit more time. Remember, one of the things that was lost in all the slicer studies on some firefighters was the part about the fuel loads and looking at what is burning inside the home. And when they looked at what they called legacy homes, homes from the 50s, and all those homes in Yellow Springs where that cute old couple lives and all their furniture is covered with plastic, you know, when furniture was actually made of cotton, that stuff burned a lot longer. It would take a room, it could take a room 20 minutes to get hot enough for flashover. That's not the case anymore. This house is going to flash eventually, but it's going to take a while to get there. So we got a little bit of time, but we still need to get inside and figure out what's going on. So we're on the scene. We got a single-story wood frame residence. We've got a working fire, probably on side C, but it's hard to tell. Side Charlie, I should say.
Also have heavy fire starting in the attic.
Yeah, oh yeah, something's going on back there. So there's a lot going on here. We're going to have to determine what the most important priority is and swing into action. All right. So this guy here, not paying any attention to these people going in and out the door here. Offensive or defensive? Yeah, it's offensive for now. As you can see, you got some shit starting up here from where this fire is. More than likely, this has now extended into the attic, and you're starting to have fire across this open attic space. So as the incident commander, as the safety officer, if there's one on scene, this is where we really need to pay attention. Crews on the inside may not realize what's going on from the outside. This is why if you're in fast attack mode, you know, we're trained or we're taught, it's really only 5 minutes of fast attack. That company officer's inside. Either someone else was pulled up outside and taken command, or that company officer said, well, this shit's getting real. I need to pull myself out and take command from the outside. This is a good example of it, because when you're inside, it's going to be tough to figure out what's going on completely. So we're going to have a lot of work to do, figure out what's going on in that attic, and go from there. This house is also covered with vinyl siding, so that's going to melt. Off gas, cause a lot of problems for us, but luckily it's a quick knockdown on that stuff on the outside. But once the wood starts going, because it's all OSB or fiberboard, it's going to go pretty quickly and have a lot of crap in it. This one, for my money, these are worse than an actual fire. I mean, there's obviously a fire in there, and you can kind of see a little bit of fire there. But those ones, especially if you pull up at night and all you see is this big, heavy smoke cloud, you can sometimes not even see the structure. If this is like a July night here in where are we? Ohio, all that smoke is going to be held down towards the ground due to the humidity, and it's going to be really tough to figure out what's going on. So we need to get in there. If you look closely to the picture, it looks like we've got a fire burning in whatever room this is. You can see the fire out the side and really dark black smoke coming out here. This all looks like just extension smoke that's coming out and billowing over that way. This could be a quick knockdown if we're quick, if we can get in there fast, but we also have some other issues here. It looks like we have a significant setback. So that could be a real problem. We may have to deploy a 2.5 and then gate it down to get the line in place. You may be able to pull an engine up the driveway, but it depends on where it is, how many cars are there, that kind of stuff. So access is going to be an issue here. You could get an air tanker to come in. That would be nice, but probably not very practical. And this is my favorite. So clearly we've got a hell of a fire going in this house. It is really burning well. It's igniting a lot of stuff, as you can tell by the dark color smoke. There's fire in the smoke, so it's pretty ugly. It's flashed. It's doing its thing. Do we think there's a possibility that if anyone's in there, they could still be alive?
Yes.
Possibly. Very slim. We can't see the back, so this could be one really long house, maybe. I don't know. Doubtful. This is probably small, so it's probably almost fully involved at this point. Even the area that's not involved in fire, you can see this black smoke billowing out. So not a whole lot going on for if you're in there. You probably did. But what about these folks? Life sucks to be them. We need to work on protecting exposures here. And this is a real pain in the ass because our instinct is to get in here and fight this fire. It is not to protect these two structures, but that's pretty much what we're going to have to do. This one probably has vinyl siding on it. This one may. It may have aluminum. It looks a little older. They're going to start to melt and start to burn. So we need to start cooling these things down. In the old days, we'd use a water curtain. They weren't very effective then, and we don't use them anymore. Here, this is a perfect thing to get a big line on. Start hitting it with deck guns or whatever, whichever one is most at risk. Traditionally, in Yellow Springs, you had a good distance between homes. However, as zoning has changed and they've wanted to do more infill, we now have homes that are closer to property lines. They're only 5 feet from the property line. And soon we're going to have this little tiny home development just south of us here on Xenia Avenue. So it really brings up the issue of exposure control and having to look at all these issues that traditionally we haven't really had to worry about that much. So essentials, as Alan Bernasini said, if the building burns, don't take it personally. You didn't make the world combustible. Put the wet stuff on the red stuff, and all fires go out eventually. So when you fuck up, just remember that. Now, we don't want to screw up. Your decision making should be on point when you get there. You should be making the right choices. And hopefully you're also smart enough that you're in a position where you can tell if you should be in that front seat. Sometimes, not as much anymore since we have so much smaller crews, but we have had issues in the past where someone's like, well, I'm a firefighter too. I've never been in a fire, but I get in the front seat and I have no idea what they're doing. So we need to make sure that, whoever's in that front seat knows what's going on, because the chance that you're going to have a command officer on the scene are slimmer than they have been in the past. So any questions? And if you do, either type them in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask the question. Or perhaps even a statement. Well, no statements. All right, cool. Thank you for logging on. You will get your CEs for this, your fire CEs. Again, if you need a certificate, let me know and we'll get it for you. Otherwise, 2 weeks from tonight should be the next one for an EMS drill, so you can get those CEs as well. Assuming this actually did record, like I think it did. What the hell is this? Cool. We'll put it up on YouTube and there'll be a CE quiz. If you were here tonight, you don't have to do that. So don't do that. You won't get double CEs. Sorry, Murphy. So anyway, thanks again. Have a good night. Don't set anything on fire unless you can put it out.
Thank you.